Fletcher. I am the community director here for Diablo. I'm joined by this wonderful panel, plus an additional head, which we will call out. But
we only have 4 seats. So we have to swap people around as we go.
We have to do the same thing we did during the PTR stream, which was like we swapped out like Joe Shelley and we put in Adam Jackson.
That's true. We did do that.
And so we're gonna play more magic tricks today. But do you guys want to do a quick intro to yourself to the wonderful Diablo community?
Sure. I'm Joe Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo 4.
And I'm Adam Jackson, the lead live class designer for Diablo 4.
And we have a new face.
Hello. I'm Colin Feiner. I'm the lead live game designer.
Awesome. And then we're actually going to be joined by Derek.
Who are you?
Oh, well, I already introduced myself.
Oh,
you
sorry.
just missed it because
I'm already screwing this up, everybody.
I know, terrible.
It's my first stream.
But we actually have Derek who will be joining us as well. Derek, you just saw in the video prior talking about Season 4. He'll be swapping in to talk a little bit more about Helltides later in this. But big stream here. We have Season 4 coming up. As you guys saw earlier this week, it is Loot Reborn for Season 4. And a lot of players actually got to experience it a couple weeks ago with PTR. This was our first Diablo 4 PTR. It was a massive undertaking from the team here, but it was really, really great to have players jump in early, check out Season 4 and all the changes, and actually provide feedback. And so we have a lot to cover today based off of feedback that we received from players from PTR itself. So, but Joe, I know you wanted to jump into kind of talking a little bit more about Season 4, how PTR went, before we jump into all the changes.
Yeah, happy to. So, okay, so last time we were on stream, we were actually talking about a lot of the changes that players are going to get a chance to check out on the PTR. So we think that went really, really well. It was even just having the week of time for players to like just jump in and just crush through all of the content, check out all of the new features, and get a lot of feedback, find a lot of bugs on the way as well. Was again super valuable. It's been really, really great for the team. We'll take a lot of this feedback, look at the tuning variety of features, and really make sure that we've got the best version of the Season 4 experience ready when we get into the launch state. So in terms of like our big takeaways, first of all, really, really valuable across the board. Season 4, Season Loot Reborn was, as I mentioned during the PTR stream originally, was really our opportunity to go back and take a lot of the feedback in that we've been looking at since the launch of the game from 2023.
This art is so good.
I do love the key art for this. This key art for Season 3 was awesome as well.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So so looking back at the thanks for disrupting my flow.
I'm sorry. David art is amazing.
So looking back at the launch for the product in 2023, we've been getting a lot of really good feedback. You remember back in Season 2, Season of Blood, we made a big change to like vulnerable damage and like the multiplicative damage that comes along with it. We made a change to the way the elemental resist worked.
Yep.
And there were a lot of things we had to do to make those changes.
It's more so they made it work.
Paragon nodes that had to get updated. There were a lot of like legendary aspects that had to get changed. There was just a lot of itemization stuff in the background that we had to do to make those systems work better and lift up other things around them, like overpower, for example, to make that feel like it was in a better spot. So now that we're looking at like even when we were done that one big release for Season of Blood, we knew that there was a lot more that we wanted to do. Again, that we've been thinking about. But there's a lot of work we need to do, like make sure that all of these things really all fit together cohesively. So, I mean, as people got a chance to see on the PTR, like the introduction of things like the tempering feature, which we're going to talk a little bit more in a minute, where you get to like introduce these new like affixes into items, and affixes you can't get on items anymore. The reduction affix count on items overall, so it's a lot easier to go and sort through 25 pairs of gloves in your inventory at any given time, where you don't really have those same situations. We reduced the number of items that drop in the game experience overall, but made sure that the items that are dropping are just more valuable, are more likely to be upgrades for you, or something you could kind of like build into an upgrade. We introduced the Masterworking feature, right? And Colin head a lot of these things up, right, during working with the teams. So they introduced the Masterworking feature where players can continually upgrade items to increase the value of the affixes, and then it ranks 4 and 8 and 12. You get to like kind of crit on one of these and make them even better. There's a lot of things that were introduced. We added the new content type in the form of the Pit of the Artificer. It's like this new extremely deep and deadly dungeon dive players get to go into once they get into the towards the end game when you're getting to 85, 90 for your character level. You're starting to kind of dip into that space, and that's where you go to get your masterworking materials, which feels really, really good. And we learned a lot of really great lessons from like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3 because we think there was some really cool content there. So there's some really, really fun things there. And then
also the Codex of Power updates. You no longer have to save all your legendaries all the time.
Codex of Power updates,
So
which I was
much.
to be fair, I've been so excited about the Codex of Power updates. I've been teasing it for like 6 live streams. I feel like it's just not like
so
before
good.
BlizzCon. I feel like I teased it at the end of a live stream, so it is what it is. But again, super excited about the Codex of Power changes. That is very
that's
transformational. Like now,
huge,
when it drops
actually.
on the ground for you, you just salvage it. You get that aspect, put it into your Codex, add the role that you got. And you just get to use it in perpetuity. And we actually have some fun ways, we'll talk about later, how we're playing with that a little bit.
Actually, you have to
as we
unlock
go.
it every single
So,
season,
all
so
of
it's
this
not
stuff
actually
and more,
perpetuity.
We've made
But
huge changes to Helltide that
For that
Jared will talk
season.
about in a little while, as he helped lead the team, did a lot of the work for that. And we got to introduce the season theme in the form of like Loot Reborn, and then the reintroduction of the Iron Wolves mercenaries the players will be working with during the course of the release. I know that we showed a little bit of that off earlier. And I'm just really, really excited about the release overall, as this was an opportunity for us to work with like not just the season team, but also the live team, and like a lot of support from the systems groups. And there's a lot of things being done for the expansion, that's coming out eventually as well, like Vessel of Hatred.
Yeah, it's coming out this
being
year.
able to, like really organize teams and make sure we're in a really, really good spot to like provide this really big update for the game has been very, very exciting. And the feedback, going back to the feedback from PTR was, again, really, really valuable. It was great to get players in there and to get those things taken care of. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. I know that some of this information has been like, we talked to like a few like press outlets, we talked to a few different people, and like some information is getting out there. But I want to make sure we can provide a little bit more detail, because I know this is the audience that wants to know like the real specifics. We're going to get into it, right? And we'll also have our Q&A as we usually do at the end, where we can answer some more questions the community might have as we kind of go through the whole thing. So yeah, that was at a high level, that's what we were feeling about the PTR, feeling pretty good about it. I'm happy to like maybe jump into itemization, or how do we want to go?
Yeah, I think the first thing we probably want to talk about is like the itemization changes that are in season 4 that people experience, which includes like the tempering, the masterworking stuff that changed in season 4, and of course all the feedback that we got from both tempering, masterworking, and what we are planning on doing based off of that PTR feedback for the launch of season 4.
we have quite a few updates.
Yeah,
So.
lots.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just starting off then with like high-level itemization. Like let's go back to like some of the goals that we had when we started like down on this, started some of the work for season 4. We want to make sure that first players were having an easier time comparing items in their inventory. It's actually one of the first things we started thinking about when we began discussing what we thought needed to change about itemization, because the experience in season 3 and season 2 and other seasons has really been like the player. You'll get into like the you're running your high tier nightmare dungeons. You're getting lots of drops. You're sorting through all of this stuff. Like you'll have like items that are like this is like a 904 eye power sword, and this is a 909 eye power sword. Now I've got like 6 helmets that all are have a wide variety of affixes on them. We really wanted to, again, just to quickly hit this, we wanted to make sure that we had a lower number of affixes overall that could roll on different item slots. But those affixes were more like generically useful and stuff that you could really build around, as opposed to having lots of really conditional affixes going back to like the damage on Tuesdays joke. Like that's like,
The shirt that
we
Mr.
literally wearing it now.
Not as funny if you
Huge
say it out
proponent.
loud.
It's always funny. So it's obviously because it's a joke, right? Oh, jokes are always funny. But the truth is, like, we want to make sure that where we want to have conditional affixes in the game, we want to find places players would be able to opt into them in a very specific way. So initially we want items that you're really dropping for you to have more generic utility, just more valuable for you overall. And also, as a result of this, make it easier to compare those items. Yeah. So one of the changes that we made is we actually reduced the number of affixes that can naturally roll on item slots. So like now, like a rare item can roll like 2 affixes, a legendary item can roll 3 affixes.
Basically, rare
But then
items were
later
pointless,
on,
though.
With other systems you get to introduce, we'll talk about in a bit. It lets you introduce more of those.
Yeah.
And we did that.
That's looking pretty
easier to go
good
through
still,
things.
though.
We
Man.
also made all items post level 100 925. So you're no longer comparing like the designer number that's like 904 to 925. You're just focusing on what's cool about
I think
the
item
items.
power is kind of worthless.
Yeah,
though. Like,
which is super important.
it's
There's
like
lots
an
of
artificial
situations
way
where,
to
like, if you're
get
level
power.
100, like Blood Harvest might be a lot of fun, but Blood Harvest is still dropping like eye power 900 items for you. And at that point, why would you want to keep even Blood Harvest, which players really love? Like, why would you want to keep engaging with it if you can't get really good end game items from it? Yeah. So now when you're like at level 100 and you're playing in Helltide, or if you're going through Nightmare Dungeons at like a regular, like
It's a good change, though.
Level 100 monsters are higher. you're always getting iPower 925 items. They might not all have all exactly the stats or exactly the roles that you want, but you're always getting stuff you could actually potentially use.
Yeah, a lot of the things feel a lot better too, like gambling, right? Like now gambling is actually a really great source for targeting item slot because all of those are 925 at level 100.
That's right. So
Yeah, but you can
almost
still get
sitting
blues and
on, like, where
rares,
you
which is
go and you
worthless.
just churn through a whole bunch of these at once. They didn't have as much generic value. Now they're a lot better because you really can just like say, I am looking for a helmet. I am looking for a ring, and you can just go roll 10 iPower 925 rings in a row, and you have stuff to play with then at that point. So yeah, those were some of the high level changes we wanted to make with items with regards to like making it easier to compare these things. Codex hits a lot of the inventory concerns that we'd have. We made changes to gems in previous seasons, so we didn't have as many of them clogging up your inventory as well. So we thought that was really, really good stuff. But then we knew that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just about we weren't going to add another tier of eye-powered items. That wasn't the way to make itemization more interesting for players and rewards more interesting.
They added greater affix.
One of the core things that we really want to focus around was the idea that
like a new
items
tier.
have a journey. The best items have a journey, right? So when you get a really good item, it's about what the potential of that item is. What you can do with this item to make it really superior, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of to jump into tempering. One of the first features we had in terms of taking your item on a journey was this idea that we wanted hundreds of different affixes, and each one spoke differently to a build. We wanted you to be able to play sort of whatever class fantasy or build fantasy you had in mind and manifest that through customization of your items. So we actually have some video, I think, of what the tempering feature looks like, and I can talk through some of the updates we've made.
I was hoping we would see some new stuff here, because we've already seen this. They already showed this off before.
We're adding an offensive
Still good to see
affix to the item. It's going to land on increased corpse explosion damage. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool, especially if you really like corpse explosion. We've added a skip button so you can skip through the flow if you really want to blast through this. We also have a results screen now that shows you exactly what affix it landed on and what the roll range was. And then we have some more exciting affixes.
Dang, did they really nerf the Elemental Surge
For
that
example,
bad?
chance
It used to
to,
be like 40,000,
cast
and now it's
Bone Spear
1,000?
twice, which I know, Adam, is your favorite. Cause
Oh,
of
yes.
all
I love more
the
projectiles.
The balance bomb
Don't
we dropped
say
in
it
your
like
lap.
that. Everyone
It's
loves
so
projectiles.
great.
It is cool though.
It is pretty cool.
Being able to enjoy.
Oh, Derek is here. So yeah, we did our swap, but Joe's still going to be here off screen. We just want to make sure that Derek appears here. Derek is our lead seasons designer, so he'll be talking a little bit more about Helltide.
Here's what it looks
Sorry
like.
to interject. Okay,
There we go.
Go ahead, Joe.
So now I'm off screen. So yeah, I think one of the really cool things about the tempering system in general is that the manuals that we're introducing initially are just the beginning of what we can do with tempering. It's opportunities to make really weird and interesting new affixes to kind of throw at the player that we can introduce in seasons or in other updates. So it's something we can really extend and do some really neat stuff with.
Yeah, we absolutely plan to build on it in the future. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so a bunch of improvements to tempering overall.
And a lot of these, again, these improvements in tempering from the skip animations to the previews and stuff like that players will see were based off of feedback that we actually got from PTR. And so, again, huge shout out to the community for providing all that feedback for us so that we can actually get that in before the launch of Season 4. So, but with tempering, we also have Masterworking, which is another new feature within Season 4 and permanently within Diablo 4 itself.
So it's going to be on internal as well. So it's awesome.
A little bit about what Masterworking is, and of course,
I want to see the new season power though. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, so the next
because they showed
step in
all
your
of this on
items journey
PTR
is to really take it to new heights. You've customized it. You found some base affixes you're really into, and we wanted to give you a way to essentially take some of these affixes to new levels. So you think about helms and CDR or cooldown reduction. Or, for example, that chance to replicate, your bone spear. We want you to be able to really juice those stats. So I think we have a video here of what that looks like. Overall, what we've really done is taken a look at the feedback. We got a bunch of feedback that it was tedious to upgrade these over and over. So we've removed the animation from ranks 1 through 3. We've kept the critical, upgrade. We have the animation still there, but you can skip it. Again, sort of in the spirit of blasting across everything that we do, so you can do that very quickly. Another piece of feedback that we got was that, part of the masterworking process allows you to reset this. And why do you want to reset this? It's because you want to hit that specific affix you're looking for. You want to juice a specific affix. And sometimes you might miss, right? Which means you want to reset that item.
Yeah.
So part of the resetting sort of requires you to get lower tier materials. You're going to get these from the pit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, we saw a bunch of feedback that it was really tedious to create like 1,000 caches.
Yes.
Them in town like 100 times. Right? It's
Just let it auto convert.
Address that. So we've added multiple scales of material conversion to those caches. This is a short-term solution. We have something in the future planned. It's just not ready yet.
Why doesn't it just convert it automatically?
It does get you there a little bit quicker. There's multiple conversion rates of materials, so you can turn one legendary material into a much higher count of materials based on the tiers that we have in that crafting system. So again, not the perfect solution. We have something coming in a future update.
Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, a lot of changes coming for Masterworking based off of feedback. Masterworking, of course, being a brand new, kind of that end tail of that item journey that you'll have even after tempering and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah.
I'd say another thing that was brought up as feedback was about veiled crystals, right? Didn't we reduce the amount that you need for crafting?
And there's no fail rate anymore. That's pretty big.
Stuff we've done just overall on itemization. Veiled crystals is one of those things. So I'll talk about, first I want to touch on rare and magic items. That was something we made a change from Season 3 and Season 4.
Well, magic items were always worthless
just
in Diablo
generally
4.
Straight up better than rare items now. And part of our goal there is really to ensure that players aren't sifting through sand, looking through thousands of items. We want to just call it out, like legendary items are legendary. At the same time, we acknowledge that there is some coolness to knowing that certain magic and rare items could have value to you, right? We don't have anything for Season 4 yet, but the design team is definitely talking about ways that we can bring this rarity
I was giving
back in
them
a way that doesn't
feedback.
diminish
White
our
items need to do
overall
something.
goal of trying
Blue
to
items need to do
reduce that sort of
something.
through sand feeling, right? So in the meantime, they can be salvaged. They still have a use in the end game.
Well, just drop them as material then. There's no point in having them drop.
Such a bottleneck.
If they can
It's
never
God
be
damn it,
good,
I have to
right?
Pick a bunch of yellow items up to do any of the cool crafting features. What the hell, Blizzard?
That's an actual player quote too.
Yeah,
I'm very
Veiled
sure it
crystals.
was.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've made it so that legendaries break down into equal amounts of veiled crystals, so you can just not pick up yellow items. It's just a bonus now. We've also made sacred and ancestral items break down into 2 and 3 amounts of salvage. So sacred items will break down into double, ancestral will break down into triple. So we're effectively tripling the output of a lot of the salvage here.
And I know.
Okay, so that's pretty big. I'm gonna write that down because I'm gonna make some notes here.
Probably the most vocal feedback that we got from players. About,
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, like, I need more
know.
veiled crystals. So I know that there's changes coming for that in Season 4 based off that PTR feedback. Another, probably maybe the second, maybe also the first topmost, our largest feedback piece that we got is around greater affixes and the visibility related to those. So there are changes going into that for
visuals.
Season 4. So,
Yeah.
Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about
Because
that?
it's much
We
easier to see.
wanted,
There's a circle
the
now.
dopamine. That was a big goal also of part of itemization, is just like seeing an item hit the ground and just being like, oh, I like that jackpot moment, right? So
that's really important.
So we actually have some video here to show of what that actually looks like on the ground. So you can see, here's the weirdly long named item with the greater affix. Yeah, right.
Oh, you can see it in the inventory too.
Sacrificial sickle.
I know, right?
I'm gonna take some screenshots actually.
So we have a 1 greater affix star. It'll go up to 3 or 4 if it's a unique item.
Grab Photoshop for my.
Cool. So it shows up on the ground when it lands. And then
put
if
some
we
other
can go to
water.
the
There
next
we go.
video, we actually have an indicator now when it
In
is
the inventory, yeah.
yeah.
That's actually quite
so you
nice.
can see it.
Saturated right.
I asked
Can
for
we
this
go
as a
further?
joke, and it looks so good. I'm so happy.
I think they should just made it like purple or something, like a completely different color would be good
So
too.
that's
but-
been enormously helpful. And
Very
really,
nice stuff.
When you kill like Duriel or one of these tormented bosses and they drop a ton of loot on the ground, to see some of these have stars on them, it just is a feel great moment.
Yeah.
Kind of goes with the whole not sifting through the sands. You clearly see
Yeah.
that icon. You know that has value.
Or you could just add a loot
About
filter. I don't know why
and again,
Diablo
even
4
on
is just
the-
so
the
no loot
icon
filter, no
itself,
loot filter.
in
Like
your
just add it,
inventory,
man.
you immediately know those are my greater affix items. And long gone are the days of the Roman numeral. We
Right. You don't like
we
the
will.
designer
We
solution?
will miss it. It's funny.
Right.
I think internally we knew that's probably going to get changed. we had a few jokes about that, but
Sure.
I know.
One thing I want to touch on real quick before I move on the itemization, if that's okay, is We actually, to touch on the veiled crystals, I think players are going to want to know this, is we reduced the imprinting cost of aspects
Okay,
quite a bit.
cost.
So that's really going to help the veiled crystals as well. I think it went from like 75 veiled crystals to imprint on an ancestral armor to 16. So it's a
huge.
pretty huge swing. You're just getting way more of your aspects on gear. It's a lot more flexible.
We really want people to feel like, and this is kind of the Codex of Power updates in general, which I'm really pumped about, is we want you to feel like you're able to re-imprint those aspects, and that it's something that you're not having a huge cost or huge barriers to doing, right? Because as you upgrade your gear, that
if we're getting
part of your
3 times
process
the
is like
amount
putting on
for
your favorite
the
outfit.
ancestral, that's
So
pretty nice.
A lot of changes coming with tempering, masterworking, itemization, and I know. Did we have any other changes that you wanted to cover before we move on to the next section? I know Colin's got this novel in front of him, and he's like, "What am I going to
He
do?"
was a keeper of a lot of
Yeah.
our changes. Oh, one I think is worth mentioning, Colin, you may want to talk about, is the masterworking. I remember we got a lot of feedback about the fail chance.
Oh,
yeah, no fail chance.
chance. We took. Funny enough, that was
I've already
probably
talked
the
about
biggest
those.
thing.
No more.
yeah.
That's all they need to say.
Yeah, that was the first bullet, and I somehow missed it. Yeah. So we definitely felt like there's a ton of feedback that the double random chance was just a little bit too much, and we agreed. So we just took it out.
Yep.
It's just fun now. Just upgrade the item. We adjusted the material costs a bit, but the fail chance is no longer there.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Colin, for going through those changes. We'll actually be back to Colin here later because he still has more to talk about from his novel papers that he has
Joe, you want to swap now?
prepared. We did want to jump into some of the class balance changes that are coming after PTR. Of course, with Season 4, we have a lot of class balance changes that are on top of all these itemization changes. And we got a lot of great feedback from players. So, Mr. Adam Jackson.
Very much did. Yeah.
Let's run through these.
Yeah, so basically...
The classic Adam Jackson slides.
Yes, I love my slides. We have kind of 3 categories of things that I'm going to be talking about today. Again, thanks to everybody for playing on the PTR. We did get a ton
The
of
shadows
feedback.
one-shot
I'm
you,
not going to go over
basically.
the specifics of everything that changed, but I'm going to go over kind of the categories of things. Just
I can
because
tell you
there's
guys,
a whole lot of changes.
what's happening to armor, it's
One of
going to
the
be like
first big ones
resistances.
was endgame survivability issues. So this
So
is kind of
it's
talking
like
about those people that
9,000
went really
now.
far into the pit, and
I
this is
write
kind of
that
something
down.
that's been happening on live as well that we wanted to address. And there's this phenomenon when you get really deep into the game and you're fighting high-level monsters where you'll hit a point where the monsters are kind of easy and you're able to blow through with your really powerful builds, and then you kind of get to a point where they start one-shotting you. And it can be kind of mysterious and hard to understand, like, what's going on, why did this happen? We've also had some issues balancing that kind of top-end survivability when you get to those hard monsters in the game. One of the reasons for this is that variability in player defensiveness has been really high traditionally. This is why when you look at the new items in the game in Season 4, you don't see a damage reduction very much at all. It's a very premium stat now that's really hard to get, and it's to help solve this problem of when someone is stacking all damage reduction versus someone who has none of it, their difference in effective health and survivability is really, really high, and so it makes it hard to balance the game. Another part that we wanted to hit was really armor. That armor is kind of a really confusing stat. It's not really well understood how it works, and I'm going to be going over in a little bit how it works and what we're changing.
Is that 13,500 or 200, something like that? Is what you need before?
Next is that some stats can get really high. We added all these crazy awesome stats, and you can juice them with Masterworking and crit them and all these things. And it allowed for some really crazy things on the PTR, which people love to post constantly at me. And to be clear, we like crazy things.
Less tornadoes, less
it's
orbs.
awesome to get powerful and have that fantasy. We do have to take into account things like combat clarity and computer performance to make sure that the game can still run very well for everybody. So we made some changes there to address that.
You mean it's not fun to just not see the screen or the ground?
I think it is for a little while. It is hilarious, I think.
Yeah, it's funny for a bit, but when you can only see patches of ground occasionally.
And when one player can do that, let alone when you get 4 of them in a group, I think it's great. And last but not least, balance changes and bug fixes. I'll be going over some of them, but there's way more than what I'm covering right now today. But just know, we took a lot of feedback on balance, a lot of feedback on bugs. There were a lot of them that were reported, and we acted on a lot of them, and I'll give an example of some that we did. All right, so let's go into armor.
This is important.
Brief history, listener description of how armor works today. This is like when you log in, how armor is functioning. It's your stat for physical damage mitigation. So you know how you have your elemental resistance that caps at 75 and then can get pushed up a little bit? Armor reduces your physical resistance up to a cap of 85%. It can't go higher than that. That's the number. But what's confusing is the amount of armor that you need to get to that 85% cap is actually based on the level of the monster that you're fighting. And I gave some examples here. These are the actual numbers in the game. So if you have a level 50 monster that's hitting you, whacking you, then you need 5,265 armor, and then you'll be at that 85% cap. But then at level 100, at every level, like 51, 52, 53, it's good, that number is going up of what you need. And at level 100, it's about 9,230, and then at level 150 monster, it gets close to 13,000, right? And so what this ends up kind of creating is that the player really never knows when they're done with armor, right? That number can scale up forever.
You have to go to max roll or
the hood. So
mobile
when you're fighting these monsters and they get way higher level than you as you scale into the pit or nightmare dungeons or whatever, you don't really know how much you need. And so this is kind of really contributing to that phenomenon where you're fine. You're
basically next season just get Juggernaut and you're done. That's all you need.
So in Season 4, a lot of it's going to be the same as Season 3. It's still going to be your source of physical damage mitigation. The cap is still going to be 85%. And you're still going to need escalating amounts of armor as the monster level gets higher. But what we're changing here, if we go forward a little bit, is that armor is now going to cap at that level 100 monster number. So that 9,230, you can write down this number. We're also going to later get into the tooltip. We couldn't get it in for the launch of Season 4, but we'll have it soon after. But it's kind of going to be like elemental resistance, where you get to this number, and then you're kind of done with the system, right? So armor is just another thing on your checkbox of things you want to do as far as defensive survivability, and once you get it, you're done. You can get it from gear, legendary aspects, and so on. Particularly in Season 4, I think this will be a little bit of an easy number to hit. We're not trying to make this super difficult or hard to do. It'll be very achievable for you when you're a level 100 player. So here we have a zoom in on the tooltip so you can see this player has, way above that 9,000 amount of armor that they need. They have close to 16,000. But you can see there, that it's capped out at that 85% physical resistance. And again, soon after the launch of Season 4, we're going to actually put the cap that you need of the number that you're chasing, because we want you to know what the goal is that you're trying to hit.
So that means they have a lot of room for optimization, right?
Correct. Yeah. This means that
there's also
give up armor on some of their, temporary.
They can also shred your armor
other stats
on Nightmare Dungeon, so you can still overcap. As far as I'm aware of.
So next, stat caps.
Okay, yeah.
So, now that we've introduced a lot of ways to get really high amounts of stats in the game, we want to kind of control for visual clarity, what
you can't make the tornadoes super big.
So kind of similar to some
or
caps
the Frost
we have
Nova
in the game, like attack speed or elemental resistance. We're putting some caps on cooldown reduction and the increased area size. It's really fun to get those giant Frost Novas that cover the screen, but when it goes 2 or 3 screens away, it can get really noisy and messy. So we still want these stats to be really powerful and impactful, but just control a little bit the amount of insanity that they can bring. And one thing on this cooldown reduction cap, to be clear, this is not just CDR across the entire game. This is just capping what you can get from gear. So this is like the base cooldown reduction you get when you first cast a skill, what it's going to be. You can still get cooldown resets or additional cooldown effects from things like the skill tree or legendary powers that just reduce the cooldown of your skills as you do certain mechanics. This is just like the baseline cap that comes from your gear.
I think when we looked at the cap for area effect too, we tested it on Frost Nova and we were pretty meticulous on what that cap should be, and it was still massive.
No, it's huge. Yeah. When I say we're making a cap, you're still going to get to insanity when it comes to what's on your screen. It's still going to be awesome. So you can see here, this is just showing you what the tooltip looks like now. So we're going to be showing you, as a player, what those caps are, so when you're evaluating your gear on your tooltips, what it is. And then same thing here, you can see here, the dust level area effect size.
Oh, it's cool. It's in the utility.
100%.
You can actually see
next,
that.
balance updates. So again, like I mentioned before, we made a lot of balance changes based on feedback. Again, thank you for playing and giving us all that feedback. I'm going to go over some of the things.
Oh, this is good. The Druid Wolves got increased.
One of the bigger categories of things was, again, like I mentioned, those changes due to combat readability and balancing player power. A few examples here of things that we're reducing are the amount of dust levels that can be on your screen, and Fractured Winter Glass, one of my new favorite uniques we're bringing in. The amount of frozen orbs that could span the screen is going to be reduced a bit, so I want to prepare you all for that. Again, to be clear, you're still going to spawn a whole lot. It's just not going to be insane amounts where you can't see things anymore. They're still going to be very powerful. I'm even going to show a video a little bit later of kind of the difference of PTR to what's going to ship in the game. Some other things, though, that we're doing, Fortify. We wanted to increase the amount of damage reduction that you get. This is just Fortify across the board, the base mechanic.
50%
that DR is
stronger.
going from 10 to 15%. And this was because before, when it was at 10%, we had to take into account that players could get damage reduction from a million different sources throughout the game. Now that it's more rare and more premium, we can actually make this mechanic in the game a little bit more impactful and feel like you're a tankier player for opting into this, these kinds of builds. We also made a lot of tempering affix updates. I'm not going to go into detail them, but just know like what you saw in PTR and what's going to ship, you're going to see a lot of improvements, a lot of balance changes, even some shuffling around of the affixes to make them in ways that make more sense based on feedback. And then we did do some class changes as well. I'm only going to give very few examples here, but just know that there were quite a few. One is Druid players. Companion Druid players always harass me. They want that build to work, and I agree. It's really cool. So we increased the health of Druid wolves by 200%, and we also reduced the respawn rate and cut it in half. So, we got feedback basically that, their companions were really good and fun and did damage, but in the late game, they just kind of died and couldn't survive. So we're doing this to kind of address that feedback.
I think that might still be like not that.
All right, so here's Dust Devils as
that much
examples.
HP.
You can see on the left, this is just one barbarian by themselves, the amount of Dust Devils that they could produce, right? Yeah. And then on the right, you can see kind of the same.
It's definitely a massive nerf. They should have at least buffed the damage so people wouldn't complain.
They're still getting hit by a ton of them, but it's not covering the entire screen, right? And especially when you get like 3, 4, many players together, it really becomes insanity.
Yeah, especially when you're in a party of 4 Barbs or it's just like everyone's a Barb and I don't know where I'm walking.
Yeah, and other classes could do that kind of thing too, not just Barb, but this was kind of a good example. So, this is kind of seeing the difference between PTR and live. And then next we have another class change, so Scoundrel's Kiss. This is another one of our new uniques that rogue players gave us a lot of feedback on. So a quick summary of how this unique works is it kind of changes your rapid fire skill from shooting straight and hitting a single enemy into kind of a mortar skill where you shoot up into the air and then your arrows fall on the ground and explode. It's really, really cool, but one of the pieces of feedback we got was that when you launched the arrows, they would kind of go in a line and they wouldn't all hit the same enemy anymore. So if you were trying to do single target damage,
you had to shotgun.
Nerf unless you walked right up to the enemies and shotgunned them. And while there was a way to play around it, players weren't really happy that we transformed the skill so much that it went from a ranged skill to kind of a melee skill. So we made an update here, and we have a video of the before and after. But basically, you can see on the PTR on the left here how it goes in a big line, and then the player has to run right next to the target dummy to do the full damage to it. And on the right now, you'll see basically you target where those arrows are going to drop, and they just all go to that area. So you can hit a single enemy, but you'll also hit all the enemies around it because the arrows explode. So it should be a lot more usable compared to before.
Can Scoundrel's Kiss ricochet with my rapid fire?
I'm pretty sure, yes, it can. So it does all the things and inherits all the things that your rapid fire does.
That's very cool.
But can it double projectile?
I'm pretty sure it can, just like everything else. Yes. Yes. Spam everywhere.
Yes.
We love spam. And last but not least, bug fixes. Like I mentioned before, there were a whole lot of bug
Druid,
fixes
I think,
to us.
Druid and M Piercer doesn't work
we
anymore.
addressed pretty much every single one that was reported. I'm giving some examples.
I was
here,
hoping the
again,
Necromancer one would stay though.
I'm showing on the screen. One was Druid's Hurricane was incorrectly scaling damage basically infinitely, so we fixed that. Ebon Piercer, the extra missiles from our new unique, they incorrectly had 100% lucky hit chance, which is proccing a lot of crazy stuff. And then Flame Weaver, another one of the new things we introduced to the game. It's basically an effect where you can put a firewall on the ground and then you shoot firebolts through it and it'll split the firebolts. Really cool fantasy. But what happened in the PTR
I didn't know you could
stack
stack
a bunch of
firewalls
right on top of each other and they would split
pretty
the
crazy.
firebolts multiplicatively and add more and more than intended. So you could fire a ridiculous number of
rip that
firebolts
build.
which were crashing servers and things. So it wasn't great. But now we fixed that so it'll work properly. And again, we're still discovering and working on other fixes. There were a lot more that went in. If you reported it, it was very likely fixed. So basically, the build will be in a much better stable state once we launch.
I was hoping we get some other
really
rogue buff though. To be honest, it's probably the weakest class still.
And yeah,
Awesome.
that's my section. So.
A lot of changes coming to classes. Class balance feedback we got from PTR was really, really great. You know, we were able to make so many different changes there. Of course, some of the biggest ones like the readability stuff that we probably saw. Seen the initial videos of.
I'm gonna go ahead and cut it here so we can title this like the class balance section and or updates, just so the video's not super long. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1 of the campfire chat. I'll upload like part 2 in a separate one, just so it's not gonna be super long. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed, drop a like and well. I'll see you guys in the part 2 of the campfire, which will cover something else.